Donald Trump is leading one of the most reckless and chaotic administrations in history. You see it, I see it, and now even Fox News, his longtime supporter, can't ignore it. Over the past few days, as this scandal has unraveled, Fox has struggled to defend Trump, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and Mike Waltz. But now, some of their own hosts are turning against him, openly calling out the disaster and exposing his lies. We'll dive into all of that in just a moment, but before we do, take a second to like this video, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It really helps and means a lot. Now, before breaking down how Fox hosts are slamming Trump and Pete Hegseth, let's first get some key context from Rachel Maddow.
Donald Trump's defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, isn't working out all that well. And it started right at the beginning. Right after he was sworn in, there was the midair collision of a passenger jet and an Army helicopter in Washington, D.C., despite the strict and solemn rules of the Defense Department that say no information about deceased service members can be made public until 24 hours after the next of kin has been informed. Pete Hegseth, nevertheless, blurted out to the public the ranks of the 3 helicopter crew members who had just been killed in the crash. Hegseth also blurted out that the crew members had been performing a training flight on a, quote, continuity of government mission. Mr. Hegseth, quote, was later told that he should not have publicly disclosed that it was a continuity of government mission, which involves U.S. officials and military forces practicing how the government would react in the event of an emergency. Just a couple of weeks later, Mr. Hegseth took his first big international trip as defense secretary, went to a big NATO meeting in Europe, and he began the trip by just totally flummoxing not only our allies, but also a lot of Washington, when he again just blurted out that any peace deal in the Russia-Ukraine war would have to include Ukraine giving up lots of its territory and abandoning its bid to join NATO. That caused major blowback. For obvious reasons, he was just giving away Ukraine's major bargaining chips even before negotiations had started. When that blowback made its way to him, Pete Hegseth sort of angrily asserted that he had basically been the victim of his own comments.
As it pertains to NATO membership not being realistic outcome for negotiations, that's something that was stated as part of my remarks here, as part of a coordination with how we're executing these ongoing negotiations.
That's something that was stated as part of my remarks here. I don't know who stated it, but it was part of my remarks. I did not state it. It was something that was stated by something inside my mouth in my remarks time. It's very offensive to me as well. Now we're all living through Pete Hegseth's latest and greatest.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Right,
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's
The
it.
NSC said it was authentic.
Nobody's texting war plans.
You're right.
I know exactly what I'm doing, exactly what we're directing, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished. Nobody's texting war plans. You know who sees war plans? I see them every single day. I looked at them this morning.
Nobody's texting war plans. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what war plans look like. War plans, I see them all the time. I eat war plans for breakfast.
The administration is now trying to spin the narrative, claiming these weren't war plans, but attack plans, as if that minor shift in wording makes any real difference. No matter what they call it, and yes, they were war plans, the reality is that exposing this information put every soldier involved in that operation in danger. At the core of this issue is not just the reckless handling of classified information, but the severe national security risks it creates. Sensitive details were reportedly shared on unsecured servers, including private Signal chats. Adding to the concern, Tulsi Gabbard was traveling abroad, and Steve Witkoff happened to be in Russia at the time. If his phone was connected to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, it's highly likely that the Kremlin gained access to critical military intelligence. That's not just alarming, it's dangerous. This reckless behavior is putting soldiers' lives at risk and eroding the trust that is essential within our military. And that's exactly why Fox News, both in a segment we're about to watch and a tweet from one of their hosts, completely tore Pete Hegseth apart for pushing this lie.
Pounding Houthi targets in Yemen, despite all of this signal scandal. At the heart of the administration's defense, what constitutes war plans and classified information, as you saw some of the back and forth on Capitol Hill. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin takes a look tonight from the Pentagon.
It's by the awesome grace of God that we are not mourning dead pilots right now.
More fallout from the national security text chain set up on Signal to discuss details of future operations to target the Houthis in Yemen. Defense Secretary Hegseth, who was visiting troops in Hawaii, spoke before departing for Guam.
Nobody's texting war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
The texts were sent by the Defense Secretary 2 hours before the airstrikes began. At 11:44 a.m. Eastern Time, Hegseth posted, "Weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch." Then he went on to outline the operation's future timeline. 12:15 Eastern, F-18s launch, first strike package. 14:15, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop. 15:36, F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. Congressman Krishnamurti quoted from the DoD manual on classified information.
Information shall be classified if its unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause describable damage to national security. This includes military plans, weapon systems, or operations.
That's also an accurate quote.
What was shared in the Signal group chat goes beyond war plans because they included the timing of the operations. The Republican head of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, has called for an investigation and further hearings. Quote, "The information as published recently appears to me to be of such a sensitive nature that based on my knowledge, I would have wanted it classified."
These were, without a doubt, war plans. There's no spinning that fact. Tim Miller made an excellent point on the Bulwark podcast yesterday. Imagine if the person who leaked these plans to The Atlantic had been a black woman or someone Pete Hegseth would dismiss as a so-called DEI hire. What would the reaction be? How would mainstream media, not just right-wing outlets, cover it? Pete Hegseth himself would be demanding jail time, a military tribunal, and an endless investigation. But when it's someone from his side, suddenly it's all about deflecting blame and twisting the narrative. That's why we're also seeing Fox hosts like Tomi Lahren call him out. His desperate attempt to sugarcoat this Signal chat fiasco is only making things worse. It was reckless from the start, and the whataboutism from his defenders is getting exhausting. As Tomi put it, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Own up to it and move on. And for once, I agree with her. Well, almost. The only part I'd push back on is the idea of moving on. No, we shouldn't move on. Pete Hegseth should be fired. Tulsi Gabbard should be fired. Mike Waltz, Steve Witkoff, fire them all. Throw Marco Rubio in there too. These are people who have shown they can't be trusted with our most classified information. But should we be surprised? Not when they're under the leadership of a former president who thought storing classified documents in his bathroom was a good idea. The most concerning part isn't just the lies. They don't even seem to grasp the gravity of what they've done. Their recklessness has put national security at risk, yet they act as if it's just another partisan debate. But plenty of others do understand the severity of this, including many Democrats who are calling them out, like Senator Mark Kelly, who had this to say.
Isn't it a problem that practically the entire Trump national security team was debating this on an unsecured messaging app?
It's a huge problem, and it's reckless. I think there was some carelessness that set up the whole situation where this happened in the first place, creating the signal chain, inviting a journalist. But when you start putting operational details, which in the DoD ecosystem is the most sensitive information we have, when you're about to send, in this case, pilots feet dry over the beach into enemy territory where there is a significant surface-to-air missile threat. This is the kind of information that if it gets out, gets people killed. It is disrespectful to our service members, it's dangerous, and there should be accountability because of it.
Senator, you were told that this is not the only Signal chat. There were other Signal chains involving Trump officials. What do we know about those chains?
Well, I don't have any details about that. I asked if this occurs in other instances. whether they use Signal for other things. I suspected they did. But the big question is what is shared on those separate text message exchanges, essentially, is what it is. And Signal is more secure than a regular text message. But we also know that the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, they try to access our devices. They can crack that encryption. And if you're the vice president or the Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, Secretary of Defense, you've got to know that they're trying to get into your device in these applications, these commercial applications. And because of that, you just don't share this information. If these individuals that did this as part of the president's national security team, if they were like mid-level or even senior officers in the military, admirals, generals, they would be fired for this. This is clearly against the rules. It's against the law. It should never have happened.
Guess you've called for Pete Hegseth to resign. Should Mike Waltz resign as well?
I think Mike made a careless mistake here. If you go back and you look at what was shared on Signal in this text chain, it wasn't him that was sharing what I view as classified information. But even beyond classified, this is the most sensitive information that the Department of Defense has.
Here we need resignations, we need firings, and most importantly, we need criminal accountability. Laws have been broken, plain and simple. They can try to spin it, twist words, and as Tomi Lahren surprisingly put it, wordsmith their way out of it. But at the end of the day, language won't save them from the fact that they violated the law. That's why we have to keep calling this out. We can't let it slide. This is an issue we'll continue to highlight every single day, and if you want to support that, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you made it this far, drop a heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
perspective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time. Anybody else? I'm doing all right, Steve. I'll tell you. He went through a lot, and he's stronger than ever.
Donald Trump was struggling, and it wasn't just his mouth. It was his brain, too. He completely forgot Usha Vance's name in this clip right here. Watch this.
We're invited over there, and I thought it would be I have great respect for the wife of our of our great vice president. I think she's a brilliant woman. She's a very nice woman, and she loves the concept of Greenland, and so she's.
This man's brain is deteriorating. Donald Trump is getting dumber by the day, and it's not just when he speaks. It's in the absolute incompetence surrounding his entire administration. These are not smart people, and honestly, I'm sick of MAGA pretending that Elon Musk is some kind of super genius, or that Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, or RFK Jr. are deep intellectuals. They're not. They're conspiracy theorists. Great for MAGA TV, but completely useless when it comes to actually running the country. And the proof, it plays out right in front of us, over and over again. These people are being directly influenced by Russian state media, just like Trump himself. But don't take my word for it. Just watch this.
Ukraine. In an interview with Time magazine published this morning, President Zelensky said he believes that some members of your team have been influenced by Russian information. Those were his words. What do you have to say to that?
Well, probably they have been influenced to get this thing settled because Ukraine wants to see it settled. I think they have to have it settled, and Russia wants to see it settled. And I think if I weren't president, this would never happen.
I think we've all seen that clip. Steve Witkoff, completely mesmerized by Vladimir Putin. The admiration, the praise for Trump, the heartfelt prayer, and, of course, the grand gesture. Putin's beautiful portrait of Trump. And suddenly, Witkoff wonders, maybe Putin's not so bad. Maybe this murderous dictator, the one who invaded our ally, is just misunderstood. Maybe he's just a swell guy with a little love in his heart? Number, he's a murderous dictator, and you're selling out our ally for a picture. That's how easy it is. That's how cheap it is. These people are so gullible, and dictators know it. That's why they wanted Trump, not just for him, but for the people around him. People who are easily controlled, easily swayed. And it's not just about admiration, it's about power. We're watching it play out in real time, in the most critical parts of our government, in the systems meant to keep us safe. Like when Donald Trump was asked about the FAA.
Very, very fairly. I'd like to ask, if I might, Sean Duffy to say a few words about the air traffic control situation. You know, there were some mishaps, one in particular, the helicopter crashing into the plane. We have a system that's 40 years old. They spent tens of billions of dollars trying to patch it up and, you know, make it work, but it doesn't work. And my pilot says they use different systems. They don't want to use our system. It's so obsolete.
You ever listen to someone speak and think, what are they even trying to say? I mean, sometimes I can kind of decode Donald Trump, but this? This is just pure gibberish. They have a system that's not our system, that they're not using system. A system. What does that even mean? I'm sorry, but this might be the dumbest day in American history. How is this guy president? How are we being governed by the most incompetent people possible? And it's not like they just appeared. He chose them. Every single one. This is the MAGA strategy in action. Break the government, then point at the wreckage and say, look, it's broken. Maybe we should get rid of it. They want to privatize everything. They want to strip away the most important social programs. And where do you think all that money is going? Right into the pockets of billionaires. So Elon Musk can get an even bigger tax cut every year. And the people defending this? Absolute clowns. Just listen to Sean, Steve, whatever his name is, Duffy.
We're $36 trillion in debt. Right? You've never had a Doge. We've never come in and looked at our government the way, Mr. President, you've looked at this government and said, there's too many people, there's contracts, fraud, waste, and abuse. And so we've had a few bumps in the road as we've gone through this process, but if you look around this room, everybody has seen how the process has evolved, and everyone appreciates some of the insight and technical support that we've gotten
question is, how much worse can it get? Oh, let's give a big round of applause, everyone. Seriously, Sean, great job. Planes aren't crashing in the two-a-days anymore. What a relief. Now we're only seeing one plane go down every other day. Huge improvement, right? Except that's not success. Success was the 0 plane crashes we had under the Biden administration. But hey, what does Sean Duffy know? He's a reality TV star blaming DEI and Pete Buttigieg for problems created by Elon Musk and Donald Trump when they gutted the FAA and attacked air traffic controllers. People doing incredibly difficult, high-stakes jobs. Honestly, I don't even know what to say anymore. Governed by the dumbest people alive, and yet they actually think they're the smartest in the room. Don't believe me? Just listen to Pete Hegseth right here.
Under the previous administration, we looked like fools. Not anymore. President Trump has reestablished American leadership. The F-47 is part of it. And Mr. President, thank you for having the courage to do it and leading the way for all our warfighters.
Thank you.
The Biden administration, the Biden administration, the Biden administration. They've made us look ridiculous. And Pete Hegseth, this guy's a joke, a drunk joke. Probably why he was out there sharing our war plans. 8 drinks in, scotch and soda in one hand, phone in the other, texting away like it's just another night out. Maybe even throwing them up on his Instagram story for fun. How is this our government? How? I usually keep it level-headed, but today, I can't. This is nonsense. It's embarrassing. Every single one of them should resign. All of them. But here's the thing. We're not letting this slide. We're calling them out. That's our job, and we're gonna keep doing it. If you stand with us, hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and if you made it all the way to the end, first of all, respect. Second, if I made you feel even a little bit better, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, stay sharp,